At just 28, Sarah seemed to have it all. Her life sparkled under the chandeliers of their marble estate in Islamabad, the kind of mansion people slowed their cars to admire. It was the stuff of social media dreams, perfectly trimmed. Hedges, high ceilings, imported furniture, and enough designer shoes to fill a boutique. Married to Ramiz Asfand, a self-made tech billionaire 10 years her senior, Sarah had been living a life many only fantasized about. From the outside, their marriage looked flawless. They were the power couple of elite circles frequenting charity, galas, gracing magazine spreads, and hosting extravagant rooftop dinners. Sarah's wardrobe was an enviable mix of Elin and international labels. Their staff of 10 ensured she never lifted a finger. Her pregnancy was celebrated in the press. Her baby shower, held in a French-themed garden, made headlines and local society pages. But behind the grand gates of the villa, hidden from curious eyes, the story was very different. The gold that surrounded. Sarah began to feel like bars of a gilded cage. As her belly grew, so did her isolation. Ramiz had once been charming, affectionate, even romantic. He used to bring her fresh roses every Friday, surprise her with weekend trips, and tell her how lucky he was. But since the pregnancy began, he'd changed. Now his presence felt more like a shadow than a partner. Conversations had grown shorter, colder. The affectionate touches had stopped. If she tried to talk about the baby or share her discomfort, he waved her off with a mocking chuckle. "It's the hormones again, huh?" he would say. "You're too sensitive lately." At first, Sarah blamed herself. Maybe she was being too emotional. Pregnancy wasn't easy, after all. Maybe she was reading into things. Maybe she just missed the way things used to be. So she tried harder, cooked his favorite meals with the help of the chef, made an effort to dress up even when her feet ached, planned quiet evenings at home, but it never mattered. Ramiz had grown distant, secretive. He started spending longer hours at the office, too long. His phone was always face down or on silent, and he started locking his study. Sometimes she caught glimpses of messages when he thought she wasn't looking, just initials or short texts. Like, "She'd be gone soon." The staff noticed the tension too. The once lively kitchen was quieter. The driver hesitated before answering when asked where Ramiz had gone. Her old nanny, Farzana, gently touched her shoulder one evening and whispered, "Beta, you should talk to your mother. I don't like the energy in this house." But Sarah didn't want to worry her family. She had insisted they stay in Lahore after her marriage, proud of the life she was building. She wasn't ready to admit that something might be deeply wrong. Then came the name, Neha. It slipped casually in one of Ramiz's loudspeaker calls. "Tell Neha to confirm the meeting at 9. When Sarah asked, he brushed it off. "Just a business associate from Karachi. She's consulting on one of our expansion projects." Yet, whenever this Neha's name came up, Ramiz's tone changed low, curt, too careful. Sarah once walked into his office unannounced and saw a file open on his laptop. Neha Khan Holdings, confidential agreement. He shut it instantly. "Don't touch my laptop," he barked. "You don't understand the complexities of my business." That was the moment Sarah's unease shifted into suspicion. Something about this woman, this so-called associate, felt off. And something about Ramiz was beginning to feel dangerous. She often stood by the window at night, staring out at the empty driveway, waiting for her husband to return, heart thudding, with thoughts she couldn't voice. The cold marble floors beneath her bare feet reminded her that no amount of luxury could warm a heart that was slowly cracking. She was 8 months pregnant. She should have been glowing, dreaming of names, preparing a nursery filled with lullabies and warmth. Instead, she felt trapped in a house that shimmered on the outside but suffocated her within. And somewhere, just beyond her reach, Neha was waiting in the shadows. Sarah's days had turned into patterns of quiet dread. She found herself memorizing the sound of Ramez's car, calculating the time he left and returned, and watching how often his eyes flicked to his phone during dinner. His behavior was changing, and not in the way of a stressed entrepreneur or an expectant father. It was something else. Something darker. It began subtly. Perfume unfamiliar, floral, and sharp, lingering on his collar late at night when he claimed he had been in meetings. His clothes would sometimes be wrinkled, the faintest lipstick smudge caught in the inner seam of his shirt. He had always been meticulous, his appearance controlled and flawless, yet now there were traces of someone else in his life. Sarah's questions were always dismissed with annoyance. "Why are you always interrogating me? You think everything's about cheating. You're paranoid, Sarah. This is exactly what I meant about your moods." She started noticing he wouldn't take calls around her. Instead, he'd walk out to the patio or lock himself in the study. If she entered unannounced, he'd lower his voice, hang up quickly, or say, "Wrong number." The password on his phone had changed too. The help, once warm and open with her, began behaving more cautiously. One morning, Sarah overheard the housemaid whispering to the driver, "Wo fear I the cowrat. Nem sabni sunatau." The driver's eyes widened as he motioned to be quiet. "A woman came to the house?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. The maid fumbled with the tray in her hands. "I think she was someone from Sir's office." But Sarah could read the fear in her eyes. It wasn't just some office visitor. Someone had been in her home with her husband while she rested in her bedroom, carrying his child. That night, unable to sleep, Sarah crept into Ramez's study. His laptop was locked. His drawers were clean, but behind a stack of old business magazines, she found a small burner phone, one of those untraceable models you could buy without a registration. Her hands trembled as she powered it on. No fingerprint lock. No password. The screen lit up and dozens of messages appeared, all from a single contact saved only as N. "She's in the way. I'm tired of pretending. Soon we'll be free. You promised it would be this month. I don't care how pregnant she is, she's still a liability." Sarah's heart dropped into her stomach. She scrolled through more texts, photos of hotel bookings, a screenshot of a flight ticket, and even a picture of her sleeping, taken from the bedroom door. The caption, "Like a lamb." The blood drained from her face. She closed the phone and placed it exactly where she found it. Her whole body was shaking, but she knew she couldn't confront Ramez, not yet. If he was capable of planning something truly sinister, she needed to be smarter than her fear. The next morning, Ramez left early. He had started doing that more often. "Emergency meeting," he said, before disappearing with his leather briefcase and designer sunglasses. Sarah waited 30 minutes, then grabbed her dupatta, slid into the passenger seat of her own car, and quietly told the second driver, Camille, to follow Ramez's car at a distance. They weaved through Islamabad's upscale sectors, but Ramez didn't go to his usual office tower. Instead, he turned into a secluded, gated apartment complex known for short-term luxury rentals. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. From behind the tinted glass, she saw Ramez exit the car, look around casually, then enter apartment 3B10. Minutes later, a woman emerged from a black SUV and followed him inside. Sarah recognized her from an online photo she'd once seen tagged in Ramez's business launch gallery. Neha Khan, early to mid-30s, tall, dusky-skinned, sharp features, eyes like blades. She was dressed in a fitted kurta, minimal makeup, but confidence dripping from her every movement. The kind of woman who spoke softly and made men listen harder. The kind of woman who knew how to break things without making noise. Sarah ducked down in her seat. So it was true. Ramez hadn't just grown distant. He had created a whole second world, complete with another woman and a secret space. A world where Sarah existed only as a problem to be removed. She returned home in silence, face pale, heart shattered but mind alert. Her hands instinctively rested on her belly. The baby kicked alive, growing, and unaware of the world it was. About to enter, Sarah sat down at her vanity that night and stared at herself. She looked tired, haunted, but not weak. She had to gather more proof. If Ramiz and Neha were planning something more than just an affair, if they were actually thinking of removing her permanently, she needed to build a case. Quietly, perfectly. Sarah was no longer just a wife or a victim. She was a mother, and she would become a survivor. The smoke had cleared, and through the mirror, she saw the truth. Neha wasn't just the other woman Doc, she was the threat behind the flame. The burner phone weighed, like a brick in Sarah's trembling hands. Every night, once Ramiz was asleep or away, she would check it, cataloging each chilling message. But one night, when she pressed play on a voice memo sent just 2 days ago, her blood ran cold. Burn it all down, Neha's voice hissed through the speaker. She doesn't deserve your life. You built that empire. She's just a passenger. I don't care if she's pregnant, accidents happen. Sarah nearly dropped the phone. Her pulse pounded in her ears, nausea rising up her throat, not from the pregnancy this time, but from the horrifying realization they weren't just having an affair. They were planning to erase her. She stood by the window, her arms wrapped around her belly, the Islamabad skyline twinkling mockingly in the distance. Below her, in the house Ramiz and she had once decorated together, death was being planned. Night, sleep didn't come. Her mind whirled with memories. The woman Ramiz wanted to erase had once been his biggest cheerleader. Flashback. The foundation she built 5 years ago. Ramiz had been nothing more than a struggling tech graduate, pitching an app that no one wanted. Sarah had believed in him when no one else did. She had used her savings to support his startup, sold her jewelry to help him make payroll, and sat by his side while he coded through endless nights. She had convinced her father to invest in Ramiz's second round of funding when even his friends had pulled out. She had lived in a cramped apartment, given up dreams of Paris honeymoons and designer life, and instead pushed him toward every goal he set. She had been there when the first million came in. She had celebrated quietly when the company went public. She had never once taken credit. And now, that same man wanted to burn her alive in the very house they built with her dreams. The turning point. From wife to warrior, Sarah wiped her tears and looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes, once soft, now burned with a fury she had never known. She couldn't confront them, not yet. Confrontation was emotion. Emotion made her vulnerable. She needed proof. She needed strategy. That night, she called her cousin Ayan, a police officer in Lahore whom she trusted like a brother. I need your help, she said, her voice calm, eerily steady. Ayan heard the pain behind her control and didn't ask questions. Say the word, he replied, and I'm on the next flight. Sarah asked for time. She needed to gather more before they acted. She needed to be smart, and above all, silent. Surveillance begins the next morning while Ramiz was out on one of his mysterious business trips. Sarah visited a private electronics store under the alias of her late aunt's name. She bought 2 miniature hidden cameras, one disguised as a baby monitor and the other as a garage sensor. She had always handled the nursery herself. Ramiz hadn't even bothered to ask about the crib color, so installing the camera inside the mobile above the crib was easy. The second camera went inside a motion sensor in the garage, aimed at the fuel storage cabinets. By the end of the day, the feeds were linked to a secure app only she and Ayan could access. Now, the house was being watched, preparing an escape life. Sarah knew that if she wanted to survive, she had to act as if nothing was wrong. but behind her composed facade, she built a new life for her unborn child brick by brick. She collected documents quietly, her CNIC, marriage certificate, prenatal reports, and property documents. She stored them in a fireproof folder under the false bottom of an old trunk. She opened a secret bank account in her maiden name and slowly began transferring small amounts from her monthly allowance. She bought a second burner phone, unlinked to any SIM card, and programmed emergency numbers into it, including Ian's and her lawyer's. She kept a ready-packed go bag in the linen closet, hidden behind old bedsheets, clothes for the baby, cash, basic supplies, and a small QUR and dot every night. As her baby kicked inside her, she whispered, "I will get us out. You will not be born in fear." The calm before the fire. By the end of the second week, the cameras had captured 2 suspicious late-night meetings between Ramiz and the delivery man who left behind containers labeled accelerant. One evening, Miha was seen entering the house again, this time in athletic wear, holding blueprints of the house. Sarah sent all the footage to Ayan. "This is enough," he texted back. "Next step is up to you." But Sarah hesitated. She wanted one more chance to hear it from Ramiz himself, to confirm that her own husband had truly fallen this far, and then fate handed her that chance. One afternoon, Ramiz took a call in the garden, unaware that the baby monitor camera was still transmitting. Sarah sat in her bedroom and listened through headphones. "Yes, it's set. The generator will blow. We'll make it look like a wiring fault," Ramiz said. "Once the baby's out of the way, no one can challenge the inheritance," Niha's voice replied on speaker. "Exactly," Ramiz chuckled coldly. "And fire doesn't leave fingerprints?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. Instead, she closed the app, reached for her burner phone, and sent a one-line message to Ayan. "Next time they come, be ready." She no longer flinched at the thought of fire, because inside her burned something stronger than gasoline and greed. Vengeance. A mother's will. And no proof. The skies over Islamabad had turned an ominous gray by evening. Thick clouds hovered low, crackling with thunder, hinting at an oncoming storm. The wind howled through the tall walls of the Aspen villa, rattling windows and sweeping fallen bougainvillea. Petals across the driveway like crimson warnings. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, watching the sky, feeling her unborn baby shift gently inside her. Something in the air felt final, heavy, foreboding, and she was ready. She had waited, watched, recorded, and prepared. Her cousin Ayan was on standby, armed with evidence and warrants, waiting for her signal. Tonight was the night. The setup begins at exactly 8:47 p.m. The lights in the house flickered violently and then went out. Sarah knew this wasn't a coincidence. She heard Ramiz's voice echo from the hallway. "Power cut. Don't worry, I'll light some candles." Candles. In a house with a faulty generator, leaking gas lines in the garage, and accelerant containers hidden behind the water tank. It was all a setup, one designed to look like a tragic, accidental fire. Moments later, Ramiz entered their room with 2 candles flickering in antique holders. He was dressed more neatly than usual, cologne stronger than necessary, and his smile too controlled. "You look tired," he said, placing a tray on the nightstand. "Thought some tea would help." She glanced at the cup. Steam spiraled upward, and something dark floated just beneath the surface. "Thank you," she said softly, her hands trembling only slightly. Right on cue, the doorbell rang. Ramiz glanced at his watch and muttered, "Must be the storm." Before heading out, Sarah slipped the tea into a plant pot as soon as he left the room, entered the snake a few minutes later. Neha entered the room. She was wearing all black tight leggings, a silk tunic, and glossy heels. Her hair was pulled back, eyes lined in kohl, a mocking smile stretching her lips. "Well, Neha said sweetly, looking around. Still playing house, I see. Sarah forced a smile. Aren't you bold, walking into another woman's home? Neha scoffed. It won't be yours for long. Sarah let silence hang in the air like a fuse waiting to be lit. Then she yawned theatrically. I think the tea's working. I'm suddenly very sleepy. She faked a stagger and allowed herself to sink onto the bed. From the corner of her eye, she saw Neha smirk. Good girl. As Neha exited the room, Sarah's hand shot out, grabbed the burner phone hidden beneath the pillow, and sent the message. It's time. Recording the crime before slipping away, she opened the baby monitor app. The hidden cameras she'd installed were live, recording every word, every movement. She quietly slipped out of the room, took a hidden hallway used by the staff, and slipped into the nanny's quarters where Farzana, her loyal attendant, waited with her bag and emergency kit. You ready, Beta? Farzana asked, eyes shining with fear and pride. Sarah nodded. Let's get out of here. The fire begins back in the main villa. Neha and Ramiz assumed their plan was in motion. The lights still out, they walked through the halls with candles, pouring a thin line of liquid accelerant across the carpet, just far enough from detection. Neha tossed a burner phone onto the couch to make it look like a faulty device. Ramiz checked his watch again, heart thudding. She should be unconscious by now. Neha whispered, then let's finish this. With a flick of a lighter, Ramiz ignited the trail dot. It caught instantly, flames licking the walls, roaring into life. Curtains curled, wood cracked, smoke gushed upward. The living room went up like dry hay. The escape outside, rain began to pour, but not hard enough to stop the inferno. Sarah, supported by Farzana, moved as quickly as her pregnant frame would allow. They took the back exit through the staff kitchen and ducked into the shadows of the garden. The heat from the blaze was already beginning to glow behind them. A few meters more, Sarah's chest heaved. Her legs burned, but she kept going. Behind them, the villa was swallowed in flames. At the driveway, Ramiz and Neha rushed toward his luxury SUV, panicking as the fire spread faster than expected. Where's her body? Neha screamed. She's probably ashes. By now, Ramiz barked, fumbling with his car keys. Just as the engine roared to life, police sirens wailed. Two black jeeps screeched into the driveway, blue lights flashing. Ayan leapt out of the front vehicle. Step out of the vehicle, Ramiz asked. Are you insane? Ramiz shouted, reversing. Another jeep blocked the exit. Hands where I can see them. You're under arrest for attempted murder, arson, and conspiracy to commit homicide. An officer yelled. Neha tried to run, but slipped on the wet stone and fell face first into the mud. Officers handcuffed her immediately. Ramiz was yanked out of the car and pinned against the hood. You set your own house on fire with your pregnant wife inside, the officer spat. Monsters like you always think you're smarter than the law. After the smoke, Sarah stood just outside the property gates, wrapped in a blanket, her face lit by the blaze behind her. Ayan ran to her side, gripping her shoulder. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? Sarah nodded, eyes locked on the burning mansion. I got out, she whispered. We got out. Firefighters arrived moments later, battling the blaze that had been meant to erase her. But instead, the flames had become evidence, devouring their lies, exposing their crime. Poetic. Just as by midnight, the fire was out. The villa, once a monument to wealth and success, was now a charred skeleton. Ramiz and Neha were both in custody, faces singed with smoke and shame. Their perfect murder plot had turned into a live-stream disaster. Footage from the hidden cameras, combined with texts, voice memos, and Sarah's testimony, formed an airtight case. And Sarah? She didn't shed a tear. She stood strong, belly full with life, watching the world they built on betrayal crumble to ash. Hell had been unleashed, but she had walked through it alive, stronger and no longer afraid. The hospital room was quiet, dimly lit by the soft glow of a bedside lamp. Rain tapped gently against the window pane, washing away the last traces of smoke and ash from Sarah's past. The chaos was over. The fire had been put out, both the literal one that almost claimed her life and the infernal betrayal that had threatened her spirit. Now, silence reigned, but the silence wasn't suffocating. It was sacred. A soft cry pierced the air. The nurse smiled and gently placed the newborn girl into Sarah's arms. Wrapped in a pink blanket, her cheeks were flushed, her eyes barely open, but she was perfect. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she held her baby against her chest. All the fear, the pain, the betrayal, it melted in that moment. "My daughter," she whispered, voice trembling, "will never know fear." She kissed the baby's forehead, breathing in the newness, the warmth, the overwhelming sense of victory. This was what she had fought for. Not just survival, but this chance to hold her future in her arms, a home of her own. A month later, Sarah stood at the threshold of her new home, a small sun-drenched cottage nestled in the Murray Hills. Far from Islamabad's headlines, its courtrooms, its ghosts. The house wasn't grand, 2 bedrooms, a modest living room, and a sloped garden that opened to pine-covered valleys, but it was hers, bought in her name, paid with the funds the court had released from Ramez's frozen accounts. Asterisk, in this new life, Sarah found peace in the simple things: boiling tea in a quiet kitchen, watching clouds roll across the mountains, singing lullabies by the fireplace. Her baby girl, whom she named Iman, was growing stronger by the day. Her giggles echoed through the little cottage like music. Sarah would sometimes wake in the night in a sweat, the scent of smoke still haunting her. But then she'd hear Iman's soft breathing, and the terror would fade. She wasn't just rebuilding. She was being reborn, finding her people 2 months into her new life. Sarah joined a local support circle for survivors of domestic violence and trauma. The first meeting was hard. She listened in silence as women spoke about years of manipulation, bruises they hid, children they lost. When it was her turn to speak, she hesitated. Then slowly, she shared her story, not for sympathy, but to be heard. Her voice cracked. Others cried. And when she finished, the women rose to hug her. "You're brave," one whispered. "You're what survival looks like," said another. For the first time, Sarah didn't feel like a victim or a headline. She felt seen. The support group gave her purpose. She began mentoring younger women, helping them escape abusive homes, guiding them through legal paperwork, shelter applications, and court procedures. Slowly, she was no longer just recovering. She was leading, taking back what was hers. Sarah had not forgotten Ramez's empire, not because she wanted a piece of it, but because she had built it. With Ian's help and her legal team, she filed for rightful ownership of her shares. The court, acknowledging the proof of her financial and emotional contributions during the company's inception, awarded her 15% equity in Ramez's corporation despite his protests from prison. Media picked up the story again, but this time Sarah was not the silent wife. She was the businesswoman, the survivor, the mother, the face of a broken system finally cracking open. She began taking free online investment courses during Iman's naps, learning how to manage her assets. She appointed ethical board members, ensured female-led initiatives were funded, and pledged 50% of her share profits to social causes. The public response was overwhelming. She received hundreds of letters, emails, and social media messages from women across Pakistan and beyond. They called her inspirational, a real phoenix, hopeful proof that justice is possible. The Phoenix Foundation. 3 months after Iman's birth, Sarah stood before a packed room at a women's conference in Lahore, dressed in a simple cotton kurta, her head held high, baby Emin in a sling across her chest. She stepped onto the stage. "This isn't just my story," she began. "It's the story of every woman who was told to stay silent, to be patient, to forgive the unforgivable. It's the story of fire, but also of flight." She announced the launch of the Phoenix Foundation, a nonprofit supporting burn victims and domestic abuse survivors. The foundation would provide shelter, legal aid, therapy, and skills training. She pledged her first year's business earnings to fund the foundation personally. By the end of the week, 5 prominent women-led companies partnered with her. Donations flooded in. Her story aired nationwide. A new kind of tomorrow. One cool morning, Sarah and Iman sat on their porch. The hills were quiet, wrapped in soft fog. Iman giggled as Sarah let her tiny fingers wrap around hers. The world was far from perfect, but in this little corner of it, there was safety. There was hope, and there was fire, the kind that burned in her heart. No longer for revenge, but for change. Sarah had once been a woman surrounded by marble walls and golden lies. Now she was something else entirely. A mother, a fighter, a phoenix, and she was just getting started. The courtroom was packed out. Journalists lined the back rows, cameras hidden behind thick rimmed glasses. The entire nation had been gripped by the scandal. The billionaire tech mogul, his mistress, and the pregnant wife who had narrowly escaped a fiery death. There had been talk shows, op-eds, protests outside the gates of justice. But now it was time for the verdict, not of public opinion, but of the law. Sarah sat in the front row, dressed simply in white. She was calm, poised. Her baby girl, Iman, now 6 months old, was at home with Farzana. This was a day Sarah had waited for, not with vengeance in her heart, but for the sake of closure. Across the aisle sat Ramez, in a charcoal gray prison uniform, a shadow of the man he once was. His hair, once carefully styled, was overgrown and uneven. His eyes, once arrogant, now darted restlessly between his lawyer and the jury box. Next to him, separated by 2 guards, was Neha. No more sleek bun or designer labels, just cold, institutional blue. She looked smaller than she had appeared in the news, her trademark confidence now buried beneath layers of nervous guilt. The trial of the century, the prosecution opened with a chilling narrative. A man so consumed by greed and lust that he conspired to murder the woman carrying his child. They laid out a meticulously detailed timeline, beginning with suspicious financial withdrawals, escalating to surveillance footage, voice memos, text messages, and ultimately, the attempted arson that failed to kill but succeeded in unmasking. Lawyers struck a deal halfway through the proceedings. In exchange for her full testimony against Ramez, she would receive a reduced sentence. She took the stand, tearfully recounting how he planned everything, shifting blame as if that could cleanse her conscience. But Sarah knew the truth. They had planned it together. Still, Neha's confession was damning. "He told me she was." "Just in the way," Neha said, voice trembling before the court. "He said the baby would inherit everything unless she was gone. I didn't stop him. I helped. We thought it would look like an accident." The jury listened, unmoved. Ramez's last performance, when Ramez was called to the stand. He wore a smug smile, the kind Sarah had seen many times in their marriage. Usually before a lie. "My wife is mentally unstable," he began. "This entire trial is a circus built on exaggerated claims and manipulated recordings." But then the prosecution played the final video, the hidden nursery camera recording, with Ramez's voice crystal clear. "Once the baby's out of the way, no one can challenge the inheritance. Fire doesn't leave fingerprints." Silence. Even the judge's face stiffened. Sarah didn't look away. She wanted him to feel her gaze, the unbreakable stare of the woman he had tried to erase. Verdicts and sentences on the 12th day of the trial. The verdict came in. Ramez Asfand, guilty of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, arson, and tampering with evidence. Sentence: 35 years in prison without parole. Miha Khan, guilty of conspiracy and arson. Sentence: 18 years, with eligibility for parole after 12. The courtroom buzzed. Reporters rushed to deliver headlines. A few people in the gallery even applauded, but Sarah didn't. She sat in stillness. The war was over, and she had won not just in court, but in life. Flashbacks, the greed that consumed them as the verdict was read. Sarah's mind wandered through memories like old burned photographs. Ramez in his early days, coding by candlelight, swearing he'd changed the world for her. Neha at the first launch party, lurking near the champagne, her eyes already calculating their growing distance. His casual cruelty, the slow unraveling of love into something dangerous. It hadn't happened overnight. It had been a slow rot built on secrets, lust, and the kind of ambition that eats souls alive. The final confrontation, 3 weeks after the verdict, Sarah requested a single prison visit. Just once, the guard led her into a small glass-partitioned room. On the other side of the glass, Ramez sat with shackled hands, still trying to maintain the arrogance he was known for. "You got what you wanted," he muttered bitterly. "My life's gone. Are you satisfied now?" Sarah leaned forward, her eyes hard but calm. "I didn't want this. I wanted a family. I wanted safety. You tried to destroy both," he sneered. "You think you're powerful now?" She smiled. "I am." There was a pause. Then she said the words she had carried in her chest since the night of the fire. "We survived, Ramez." "You didn't." She stood and walked away. He never saw her again. The last scene, peace weeks later. Sarah pushed a mom's stroller down a quiet tree-lined path in a small park near her new home. The sun warmed the soft earth. Children laughed in the distance. Birds fluttered above. A man babbled, reaching up toward the leaves. Sarah knelt beside the stroller and took her daughter's tiny hand in hers. "I promised you a world without fear," she whispered, "and I'll keep that promise every day." She stood up straight, head high, her steps steady. The camera in the mind's eye zoomed out, mother and child framed against a wide blue sky, free at last. Final narration, internal monologue. "They tried to burn me, but I was the fire.